doesn't get the blood pumping, nothing will. Tonight's debate on demographic shifts in the West.
Get it bumping.
We're going to start. We're going to let Brandon open. He's asked for 7 minutes. Vosh has graciously agreed to give it to him. Vosh can either yield us his own 7-minute opening after that, or they can move right into cross-examination. Is fine with me. We expect the debate to go on for roughly hour 45 minutes or so before super chats come in. We will be taking some select callers, but make sure that you get into the Discord if you want to do
Hopefully
that. All
you
callers
can
have
hear
to be
that.
vetted, obviously. Go ahead, Brandon, with your opening.
All right, so
Let's go, Martinez.
I guess I'll start with a quote. The Dalai Lama a few years ago said that Europe belongs to Europeans. And I agree with him. He said that refugees should go back to their homelands and build and develop their own lands. Another guy called Imran Khan, president of Pakistan, said to change the demography of a place is a war crime. And he said that in reference to Kashmir. So he was basically saying that the Indians bringing people into Kashmir is a crime because it's changing the demographics. Now, what's interesting is that if a white person were to say that, or a white European leader, they would be called a racist or a white supremacist, of course. But he's brown, so he can say that. So we're debating demographics and demographic shifts. So I guess I'll just summarize a little bit. This started in the 1960s Civil Rights Revolution. I think this is where it goes back to. It's like this post-World War II consensus driven by Jewish intellectuals, principally the Frankfurt School. You got Adorno, Horkheimer, Marcuse. You also have the Franz Boas School of Anthropology.
Martinez about to school
And their goal
him.
was essentially to
And
discredit
this host, too.
the idea of race and
I
racial
don't even know who
differences.
this host is.
And the purpose of that was to undermine
Martinez is one of my
nationalism.
favorite people.
If nationalism
BitChute.
is nation equals race,
Vouch is
then this,
self-admitted
from their perspective, this could lead to Hitler 2.0,
minor attracted
right?
person,
Third Reich
pedophile.
2.0. And to
or he
scuttle
believes that
what
it
better
should
way
be
to
legal.
do that than to convince everybody that race is not
Say
important
that.
or it's not real.
He said
And
that.
this is essentially what they've done. It's not the only factor. I don't think that's like the number. Well, it's the number one factor, but it's not the only factor. I think there's leftists who agree with them. There's other groups that agree with them that support the same things. Barbara Specter, she's a pro-immigration activist. She says Europe has not yet learned to be multicultural. I think we're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe's not going to be the monolithic societies they were once in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. They're going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented for their leading role. Jonathan Weissman, he's the editor of the New York Times. He's Jewish. He said Jews in America have done the things by welcoming outsiders that they're being accused of doing by white nationalists. So it would stand to reason that anti-Semitism would flare up whenever nationalism is on the rise. He says, it's my view that when borders are blurred, distinctions are diminished, Jews tend to flourish. But when the drawbridge is raised, when borders are clearly defined, when people are defining sharply what it means to be American, French, and British, those are bad times for Jews because nationalism rises, the Jews tend to be isolated and persecuted. So that's pretty much the motivation of a lot of these people to promote this kind of replacement immigration. So let me give you a few statistics here. The last U.S. Census shows that the white population is only 60% in the U.S., down from 90% in the 50s. The white alone population fell by 8.6% since 2010. Hispanics and Latinos grew by 23%, Asians grew by 35%, blacks by 5.6%. 6 U.S. states have fallen below 50% white, and 7 states are below 60% white. The fertility rates of white women were down in every U.S. state in 2017, according to the CDC. However, among black and Hispanic women, fertility rates were up in 12 and 29 states. A study of birth and death rates between 1999 and 2016 by demographers found that in 26 American states, whites are dying faster than they're being born, and that the population increases in the U.S. are driven entirely by Latinos. A Brookings report on demographics said that the declining white population share is pervasive across the nation. Since 2010, the white population share declined in all 50 states and in 358 of the nation's 364 metropolitan areas. A Pew study in demographics says from 2000 to 2018, 109 counties in 22 states went from majority white to majority non-white. A Brookings report says the new census projections confirm the importance of racial minorities as the primary demographic engine of the nation's future growth, countering the declining white population. New statistics project the nation will be minority white in 2045. Whites are already a minority in the under age 15 population. Canada, at least 4 major cities in Ontario are majority non-white, and 5 major cities in BC. According to a demographer, Eric Kaufman, Canada is experiencing the fastest rate of ethnic change of any country in the Western world. Almost 7 of 10 Metro Vancouver residents will be visible minorities in less than 2 decades. Canada as a whole, based on current trends, will be almost 80% non-white in less than a century. Statistics Canada's projected about 1/3 of Canada's population will be visible minority by 2031, and the country's foreign-born population is expected to rise as much as 28%, 4 times faster than the rest of the population. The majority of them are South Asians. Statistics Canada says that by 2036, as many as 30% of all residents will not have been born in Canada. Another 20% will be native-born with 1 immigrant parent. The vast majority are from Asian nations. Within 20 years, Canada will likely be as brown as it is white. The UK, a demographer, David Coleman, says white Britons will be a minority by 2066, and London, they already are a minority. Germany, nearly 1 in 4 German citizens come from an immigration background. The EU, Rotterdam, 51% have migration background, Malmo, 54%, Antwerp, 67%, Hamburg, 34%, Amsterdam, 54%, Vienna, 54%. Now, I will say, though, that the EU statistics include white immigrants, so from other European countries, so I would say that it doesn't reflect entirely the situation. I don't think it's as bad as America. America and Canada are the 2 countries that are destined to be minority white by mid-century. How much time do I have left?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, so I guess the big question is, why is it happening? What's the cause of it? Well, you don't really have to go far to find out. Politicians admit what they're doing. They say what they're doing. It's not a secret. It's not a conspiracy, really. Joe Biden a few years ago said that there's an unrelenting stream of immigration. It's not going to stop, nor should we want it to stop. As a matter of fact, it's what we can be most proud of. He says that
we need more
European
of them,
descent will
apparently.
soon be a minority. That's not a bad thing. It's a source of our strength. Trudeau in Canada said that Canada is a new kind of country. It's not defined by our history or European national origins, by a pan-cultural heritage. There's no core identity, no mainstream in Canada. It's a post-national state. In the EU, Franz Timmerman, he says diversity is seen as a threat in some parts of Europe. It comes with challenges, but diversity is our destiny. There's not going to be, even the remotest places of the world, a nation that will not see diversity in the future.
30 seconds, Brandon.
Peter Sutherland, he's the head of the UN Migration Office. He said at a meeting that the EU should do its best to undermine the national homogeneity of its member states, and said that the future prosperity of EU states depends on them becoming multicultural. And that's a very small sample of leading politicians, elites, saying what they are doing, that they're actively trying to undermine our racial homogeneity in the West.
Appreciate that opening, Brandon. Vosh, we're going to turn it over to you. We'll give you the exact amount of time to respond to that opening before we move right into cross-examination, or you can yield your time, whichever one you'd like to do.
Yeah, we'll see how much I end up needing. Yeah, I guess all the work of the Frankfurt School was for naught. It's hard to deny racial differences when we see here the Caucasoid propensity for whinging. You have to make an argument. So you say there are more minorities in America. Fine. And? They like immigration. Yes? And? Bring me the Dalai Lama. I will call him racist to his face. I'll fight him. He's old and weak. And? What are the arguments here? Yes. Obviously, there are more non-white people here in the States than there were before. Of course. Yes, they like multiculturalism and diversity. Seems to be generally a good thing. It's economically good. Immigration has proven quite good for our people. In economic terms, culturally, many of America's richest cultural exports are a product of our multicultural origins. From our food to our music, so much of what it means to be an American today and what it means to see Americans
Oh,
from
you see any of
abroad,
'em
it is
rich,
courtesy of
then?
immigrants. They are Americans as they come here and as they are born here. I really do not care what the skin tone of the people who live here is, or what their ethnicity or whatever ends up being. If you want to look at the fruits of your monoracial societies, then you can look around the world, and I ask you, find me a stable society anywhere without interior ethnic conflict. You cannot. Usually, the idea is that there's some kind of mono-ethnic state out there that can be contrasted against the crime-riddled United States. Only the strongest country to have ever existed in the history of the world. I speak only from the position of humbly, being on top of the world. But let's see what other countries are doing. Where can you find them? Every other country is riddled with ethnic conflict because ethnic conflicts are an inevitable product of having a country with more than one person in it. Ethnicities are infinitely divisible. If you look towards monoracial cultures, Japan, with their ailing economy and failing interior civic system, so beloved are their leaders that when Shinzo Abe was assassinated, the people of Japan basically shrugged and said, okay. And he was quite racist himself. Bring me Shinzo Abe's corpse. I will call it racist. I just don't understand. To you, the black person is scary, the Jew is scary. So you say they exist in our country and you imagine that's the argument. But I do not find them scary. Why should I be afraid? Why should I care? That's all the time I need.
Okay, thank you for that opening. Before we open up the floor, I just want to remind you, if you have questions at the end of the debate for both of the debaters after we close the debate down, send in a super chat. We will get to all of the super chats. We appreciate both of the debaters coming in.
This is good.
The floor is open, gentlemen.
Well, you're not denying that white people are going to become a minority, right?
Of course. What kind of idiot would deny this? It's obvious given the demographic
So why would
trends.
white people want to become a minority? See, that's the problem here. In a nation that, well, let's just take America, where politicians are now talking about redistributing wealth based on racial lines, reparations payments. They're trying to do all kinds of
What are they
handouts
doing exactly?
for example, recently Kamala Harris recently said about the disaster aid to Florida that we're going to give that to communities of color, underprivileged people, stuff like that.
Yes, they mean
Joe Biden.
It's the nature of the Democrat.
Yeah, okay, but why would white people want a society in which they are a minority? And if being a minority means that you are vulnerable, which seems to be the Jewish argument, right? The quotes I gave you there, they think that being a minority means that they're in danger, right?
I hate to cut in here, so I'm really sorry to do this, but Brandon, I do need you to turn your mic down just a little bit. You're actually drowning out. Go ahead, talk a little bit.
What about now?
Okay, we'll
1,
try
2,
that.
3.
Go ahead.
Howdy.
Okay. Yeah, so, well, white people becoming a minority is bad for white people, obviously, because our standing is diminished. They can persecute us.
Hold on.
They
Wait,
can persecute us at some point.
Before we get to the whinging, I exist in this world. I want to talk about this world. Actual harm. So far, despite literal centuries of whinging, the well-being of white people has not yet been diminished for the prominence and political power
What
of
do you
minority
mean?
groups. They've been talking about it for ages.
More and
I
more
mean,
every day.
The what's that film?
Can't say this,
the
can't do
one the
this.
racist
Apologize for
Klan,
that. Feel bad about this.
Help me here. My memory's not great. Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation, they say, the Klan will ride in, fix all America's problems after black
Klan,
people get to
the
Congress or what have you. The white grievance has lasted, longer than my lifespan or yours, or that of our fathers or grandfathers, and yet nothing has happened. You say in this abstract, you say the Jews claim that the minority is victimized. Why do you ascribe this belief to the Jews when you're the one fear-mongering over it? Do you agree with them that the minority is mistreated, or do you only agree with them when you refer
I
to the
agree with
white?
them that a minority is vulnerable to be mistreated. Absolutely, their political power is diminished because they don't have voting power. They can't vote as a bloc. They can try, but they're not going to win a democratic election by voting as a bloc. And this is what many Democrats say, that
Then don't vote as a
demographics
bloc.
then demographics is destiny, and that the more brown people in the country will help Democrats.
Whenever I hear that,
will
it is
help
not the
brown
Democrats
people,
saying
and
it. Democrats are
is-
not the ones who say the demographics are destiny. It's usually people like you.
Actually,
if
it is. I
demographics
have
are
a
destiny-
I have a Democrat saying that.
Well, I'm sure there are Democrats saying it. When I hear it, it's usually coming from folks like you. If there's any extent
It's
to which
true.
demographics are destiny, it's because Republicans are so racist. They have trouble, pulling votes from racial groups
Get
that
it
would
out of your
otherwise be
mind that they're
socially in agreement with
racist.
them on quite a few issues, which is usually pretty
So-
funny.
Remove.
So we're entering a phase where politics is totally racialized, and Democrats
As opposed to the
are
past.
voting
Wait,
based
we're
on
entering
race.
that phase.
Can we do 2 minutes here? He's just going to
Wait.
interrupt me every 2
Well,
seconds.
so the thing
We
is,
ain't
is
doing
like
we ain't
it-
doing 2
no,
minutes. I just want to talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to do 2 minutes because you just want to interrupt me.
Well, no, the thing is
wanna
that
talk.
it's going to be a contentious debate. I understand that. If it gets to the point of absurdity, I'll cut in, but it hasn't gotten there yet.
so
we're
so this is a-
entering
this
a
is
period
society.
of racialized politics, like now, like that's happening now, as opposed to the past, which was deracialized.
Well,
It's just a
we're
silly
entering a
premise.
period of anti-white racialized politics where these people are hell bent on making whites a minority because they know that they can then abuse whites. They know that they can take advantage of whites. That they can do
Whinging, the Caucasoid
redistribution.
skull
What do you make of all of these big companies saying they're going to be hiring more black people? 20% more black people this year, and
My
we're going to
suggestion
be
is that you
we're going to
find a
be
real
elevating
social
we're going to
problem to cry
elevating
about.
black people to CEO positions simply because they're
You know,
black.
listen to you.
We
This is
have
the-
we
this is
have
the whinging.
affirmative
This
action.
is the weakness.
We have affirmative
You
action
are
already, and universities
every
discriminating against white people.
Demographic capacity, in terms of economic and social attainment, white people are doing quite well here. And you hear a company go, we'll be hiring 2% extra people of color in our
It's not
positions. of
2%,
management,"
it's
And you
20%.
shit yourself.
20%.
Listen,
Boeing said 20%. Big guy.
We are not, if you have a problem with the behavior of private companies in a free market, then you are fully aware of the God-given American way that you can deal with that, which is not buying their products. If you
This
want
guy's
to
an
talk about
idiot.
what your
Man.
actual position is, the Nazi shit, the white
He's
ethno-state,
talking
the what
about
have
this
you,
to make a
you
different
need to give me
point.
an argument for why I, a white man, should give a shit about non-white people entering the country, because I don't care if they go ahead and hire some black CEOs or whatever, considering
You don't
the
care
fact that for
because
the most part,
you
black
want that
people
to
are
happen.
disadvantaged in this attainment.
You want non-whites to rule. You want white people to be diminished. You want
Can
white
you get
people
one
to be
point in that ain't
a
just you
position
complaining?
in a fetal position so that non-whites can dominate us.
Is this a kink thing? Are you every point you have
This
is
is
just
exactly
we're
what
weak,
this is what
we're being
motivates
hurt.
you.
So this, I ask you again, how is it hurting? Do you have
Mr.
an
Trans
economic?
rights, trans people are victimized. We need to help.
This
out the trans
debate's
people.
not about.
trans
This
people.
debate is not
But-
about transgender people. That's one. But
I
So
think it's
what?
about
I'm
his
just making a
things.
point here.
Yeah.
He thinks that he's an advocate of trans people and trans rights, and we have to help these people. But then when someone says white people are oppressed, white people are being demonized,
They're not
victimized in many
oppressed.
cases, being victimized in many cases, being attacked in the streets for being white. I mean, after the BLM riots, that was common. And
Yes. White
why do
people
you think that
historically have
is?
always
Because
been
white
the
people are being
primary
attacked.
victims of violence in this country. So this is the problem that I have, I think, with the Caucasoid skull shape and the political deformities it produces. His man's politics are all whining. He sees something on the news. He sees, oh, a company offers so-and-so to black people. Oh, this college does something I don't like. And he imagines oppression. This is a cognitive
It is
bias.
oppression.
You are capable, of course, of proving any point in a country as large as ours, the beautiful US of A, if you select for smaller points and try to cultivate a narrative. If you want to imagine white people oppressed, you can find evidence for it, especially if you're, pulling from headlines and are willing to be very, very sparse in the evidence that you get. In essentially every systemic sense, of course, white people are privileged in this country. In terms of all the opportunities available to them, white people are the beneficiaries of social bias. So I
Really?
don't care
So wait,
about
if we're
harming white people
beneficiaries,
here.
if we're
All I
such
care about
beneficiaries, sir,
is the question as to allowing non-white people.
hang on.
into
Let
this
him
country.
get a response in, Bosch. Go ahead, Brandon.
It's simply an immigration question.
why, if we're such beneficiaries of this system, right? Why are non-white or why are white people pretending to be non-white to get into college. There was a study that came out recently said 34% of college attendees or college applicants pretended that they were non-white to get minority-based handouts and to increase their chances to get into the college.
If white people are privileged,
you have-
why did Pocahontas Warren
you
pretend
have-
to be?
Hang
You
on,
have all
Bosch, let
these.
him
You
fin-
have
let him
all
finish.
these. You have all these white people like Rachel Dolezal. You got
That's
Jessica
like
Krug,
fucking
Carrie Barassa. They pretend that they're not white
Seth
to get an
Rogen's
advantage.
evil
Why do they do that?
pedo
You're
Because
citing
they know,
Rachel
twin brother.
Dolezal
They
as an
know
example
that
of
they
white
know that
oppression?
being,
or just twin brother.
being white is not advantageous in today's world. Being non-white is. You get all the handouts, all the privileges. The corporations want to hire you. The government wants to help you.
So this is what I
Foreign-
mean with
aid
the
wants to go-
whining and the
You
narrativizing. I
keep
was
saying it's whining, but it's true.
well, but it is. Every point you've made is the whining. You find these
does
tiny
that I have
scraps.
nothing to
If
whine
you-
about?
No, I'm sorry. Have you been denied a college application because of your race?
No, not me personally, but I'm
Okay.
sure many white people have.
How do they know?
Well, because they've actually sued Yale. The U.S. Justice Department sued Yale based on discrimination. They said that Asian and white students were denied entry because of their race.
This
They
is
said-
curious.
This has been
Why
proven.
would they be bigoted against Asian people if being anti-white is their political priority?
Well, the priority is to help black people and people who score lower on SATs. And Asian people have high IQs as well, and so they will discriminate against Asians as well.
Who
It's
said
not
high IQs? I
it's
thought
not
it was
entire-
SAT scores.
Okay, well, yes, the people who do well on SAT scores, and so they want to lift up the people who don't. And so, yeah, Asians will be included in that. It's not purely anti-white.
God, sucks Martinez
But,
is so
um,
Oh,
dumb.
how interesting.
White people
God, the
people
right
are
so
the
desperately
main ones
needs me.
getting caught up in this and getting
They
What
need
shafted.
my
Frankfurt School
Jewish
doctrine
intellectualism.
encourages these educators to be anti-Asian in their biases? Since we're playing to the conspiracy angle, is there perhaps another social explanation for why they might be engaging in this behavior besides the Jews trying to keep you down? Could we think?
Well, I didn't say that every single policy is the Jews trying to keep us down, but
Only
the
half of
overall the overall
Yeah,
like
what are you talking
narrative
about, bro?
nationalism
I-
being evil
I'm
and being
getting
a scary
upset.
thing. It's Hitler 2.0. That comes from Jewish activists.
They were
Absolutely.
socialists, and it's true, socialists tend not to like nationalism that much. That's pretty reasonable, fits within our ideology. I don't think
Not
it's
really.
that spooky.
Wasn't Hitler a socialist?
No.
Really?
He advanced rapid privatization and gave massive power to the corporate heads of Nazi Germany.
No, actually he did. I mean, there's articles proving that he had a almost close to Soviet style.
I
command
literally
economy,
don't
right?
care
So-
about the history of Hitler back to demographic shifts in the West, guys.
Yeah, also, why
Okay,
would you
so-
pretend that Hitler is a socialist? Don't you like him? Are you
Yeah,
a
I do,
socialist?
but I don't have to love everything Hitler does, right?
Gotcha. So
No,
critical support for
here's-
Hitler. We didn't like the socialism.
here's the
we liked
thing.
nationalism. I got you. No.
So,
look,
you're not denying anything I've said so far, by the way, right? Like
I
about
deny
Jewish,
almost
about
everything
Jewish,
you've said.
about Jewish involvement in promoting diversity and multiculturalism,
Well,
changing immigration
Matt,
laws.
Jews are Americans, and Americans participate in American civil discourse. It does make sense that they would have a hand
Jews
in
are
some stuff
American?
that happens in the country. You
Yeah,
know?
and
I
they
think
do
the Irish
so-
get a hand in it as well.
They do so out of selfish interest, believing that if white people are homogeneous, that they will be racist and anti-Semitic
Wait,
against
isn't
Jews.
isn't the point
And
of
so
a democracy to
why-
vote in your own interest? Wait, hold
Why
on.
should
Wait, let's-
white people put up with this? Why should white people
Listen,
let
wait,
2% of the population dictate immigration?
Hold on,
dictate
wait, we're,
foreign
we're,
policy?
wait,
we're,
wait,
whinging,
wait.
we're whinging again. So first
Yeah.
of all,
Wait,
2% of the
wait.
population
I'm
dictating,
Seth
you
Rogen's
failed
twin.
to prove this. And this isn't the debate on the Jewish
think
question. You
pedophiles
completely
be
forfeited the immigration thing. I
legal.
ask you, why should I care? And you
Idiot.
start talking about entrance exams for some reason?
Well,
so I
why
assume
should
this
we
is a
care? I
lost
don't care.
question.
I don't
But
care whether
secondly,
you think
this
it's
is-
good or not.
This is a
I care that-
democracy. Why not, fellow white man? Should I not care?
Because I don't care to win over every single white person to this position.
What
There's
about all
going
the
to be
whiteys in my audience?
okay. Well, there's going to be white people that just have these deep-seated beliefs that that nationalism is bad. It's not good. They take non-white
Yes.
partners, whatever.
We
There's going to be
politically
there's not
dislike
going to be
nationalism.
100% white people who agree with us. I think this is impossible to win over all white people. I
So-
want to convince white people who have pride in their race and their heritage to
Right.
preserve their nations, just as Jews preserve their nation in Israel.
Aren't you
and
kind of
other people,
limiting
other
your
people
audience?
preserve their
Like,
nation.
I'm only preaching Nazi shit to people who are already Nazis. You've got to win over my audience. You have to explain to them how their life is actually
Yeah,
being
I'm-
negatively impacted.
I just did. There's discrimination openly against whites in hiring now. They're trying to elevate women and minorities. A guy actually
Elevate
sued.
women and minorities. You're getting
A
my
guy
audience
actually
now. They hate
a guy
women.
actually won a legal case where he claimed that he was fired because he's a white man and they wanted to replace him with 2 women.
It's a good
He-
thing
he
that
won.
nobody has ever been fired for being black, or that would be a really shocking case of racial bias.
Yeah,
this
that-
is
that will
famously
never happen
only ever
today.
gone one way.
That will never
Um,
happen today because black
It's
people are
never
privileged.
happened today.
It won't.
It's a shame that black people aren't privileged in any way that represents in any of their like social demographics, like their average income or wealth or attainment. For privileged people, I gotta say, they sure are not showing it in any of the stats that we use to determine privilege. But
Yeah,
leaving
they're
aside, because
privileged in
we're
the
bouncing
fact
all
that
over
just
the
because
place.
just because they don't have high incomes, or most of them don't, does not mean that there aren't systemic attempts to privilege them. They are in universities. There's attempts to elevate them above
They're far
other
poorer,
groups.
but Lizzo did
They,
get to play
yeah,
the flute.
because of their own doing. But that's the thing. They're trying to rectify this by artificially elevating them up the pay ladder, up the food chain in society, and that's
I
what
see.
Joe
Gotcha.
Biden. That's what Joe Biden and Kamala
Biden.
Harris are all about.
So
That's
in
their
a-
whole administration is based on equity, and we have to help the
In a democracy.
underprivileged.
Yes, that's true. We do believe in that. In a democracy, generally speaking, the people in a country get to make decisions about how that country is run. We don't have a perfect democracy, not even close, but we have something approximating one. And it seems like what you take issue with is the very concept of people who disagree with you being allowed to participate in that system. The problem that I have is that my voting bloc overwhelmingly resides with non-white people, because white people are more likely to be racists or low IQ or whatever, your preferred voting blocs. And in this respect, if we're to talk of selfish interest, you accuse the Jews of being selfish, but you're literally arguing for selfishness as a political principle. You are
Yeah,
the Jew
because
here,
we're
you see?
it's our nation. So if we're living in the
So
West,
your
these are white
selfishness
nations.
is okay. I see.
Yes, it is. It is in my nation. Jews can be selfish in Israel. They can go to Israel and be
The
selfish there, and I have no
feeble-mindedness of the
problem with that.
racist, where you
They
accuse
can
the
go to
Jew of
Israel
being
and be
selfish,
selfish. I
but
don't
then
care.
when you do the same thing, you're like, oh well, when we do it, it's fine. I don't care for nationalism.
It's
If
fine
they
in our
do, they
nation.
can do
It's
what
fine
they
in
want.
our nation. If Jews want to be selfish and say we need Israel for the Jews because we're persecuted, but we need to make every white country majority non-white so that we won't be persecuted, why the hell would white people go along with that and allow
They're not
these,
making every
these
country majority non-white.
2% minority dictate immigration policies?
They're not.
Or dictate foreign policies.
You're
or
afraid
dictate-
of them, but they're not doing that.
Yeah, what do you mean they're not doing that? Of course they
The
are.
Jews do not dictate American immigration policy.
They don't dictate it directly. It's not like they have. I mean,
Everyone
there's
dictates
plenty of Jews
everything
in Joe Biden's
indirectly.
administration.
Oh, now wait, now
But
it's
when
indirectly.
we look at when we
What?
look at the when we
The
look
Irish
at, like,
indirectly dictate immigration
when we
policy.
look at
Women
look
do.
at
God
the
help us.
changes in immigration policy, right? If you go back to 1965 in America or other countries, Jews were influential in
Indeed,
lobbying the government to change the laws to get rid of the quota system.
Were the Irish?
Because no, it was Jewish
They weren't.
organizations like the American Jewish Committee was neck deep in lobbying the government to change the quota system.
That's crazy.
the-
And the,
and the
and
reason for
non-Jewish
that-
people listen to them. Are they not allowed
Well,
to
okay,
lobby?
okay, so because they lobbied the government and got something passed, we all have to accept it and agree with it and not try
It
to
sounds
change
like
it?
you feeble-minded Gentiles were, susceptible
So you're not
to
denying it.
lobbying.
Oh, he
I'm
is
not,
Jewish.
well, the
course
problem
we
is
are.
that your premise is retarded. Every private interest group does lobbying for the government.
Yeah,
You
and I
like
can disagree with
hyperfixate
that.
on the Jew, like, well, this one
can
time, this
disagree
one
with that,
Jewish
right?
group. But listen, I've done the circuit with these arguments. There's no like direct causative argument that can be made for like the Jews did this. But you like scapegoating
Yes,
it
there
because
is.
you don't want to believe that
Yes,
other
there
white
is.
people were responsible for you having to talk to a Mexican when you go get groceries now. You don't want to accept it, so you have
So
to
because
externalize it.
because they convinced some white people in the government to do something, I have to accept it.
Where's
and
the
not disagree with
agency?
it?
Where's the agency for those white people? They did it. They passed the
Yeah.
law.
Yeah, so what?
So, but then we were like, well, we were tricked by the Jews. Why are you so weak?
I didn't say we were tricked. I said they somehow convinced a number of politicians to agree with them based on
the
crappy
basic
arguments.
ways lobbying functions. Based on the basic function of lobbying.
Yeah. So what are you saying? You're saying that okay, they did it. They lobbied and got what they want, and I have to just
Lots of
go
groups
along with it
lobbied.
as a white man, and
A
I have
ton.
to go along
Yeah,
with the
well,
plan
that-
to replace my people.
Hold on, nobody's replacing your people, and it is true
Yes, they
that in
are.
a democracy, when you elect representatives, the representatives will pass laws. The main people who care about immigration are companies. You know that, right?
Jeez.
Like the supply of labor and free movement of capital is massively easier.
There's
when you have
other
free
people.
immigration
There's
laws.
other people who agree with them. The big unions support it now. Big churches support it now. Just because there's other
It's good
people
for
who
our
agree with them,
economy.
just because there's other people who agree with them doesn't mean that there wasn't a role that they played. Doesn't mean it wasn't an
They
imperative
play a role.
role.
Wait,
It
this
doesn't
is
mean
such a
that they don't
scapegoat. They
have.
play a role
Doesn't
in
mean they
everything.
don't
The
have their
Italians
own
play a
motives.
role.
They have
A
their own
ro-
motives to do it.
This is the nefarious Jewish question. We have undeniable proof that Jewish people may have at
I
some point
just
been
quoted
present
to you
when
them
things
saying, I just quoted to you a Jewish activist saying, we're doing it
Oh, no,
because
a
we're
Jewish
afraid
activist?
of white nationalism.
That
We're
guy-
afraid
was
of,
it
of
Soros?
Hitler 2.0. So, do you want to quote from Soros' son where he says that Soros does what he does because he's Jewish?
That's great. Wait, a Holocaust survivor might have been influenced by surviving the Holocaust to oppose people like you? Hold
Exactly.
on.
So why should
I need a minute
So
to
why are-
reconcile
should I-
that with my
He's an
priors.
idiot.
That's
He
gonna
Okay,
take
so
doesn't
you're
get it.
just agreeing with the Jews
Yeah.
and their agenda. So you're saying that
That's
Jews
false.
have this agenda that
Well,
they're
if a
afraid
Jew
of
says something I
homogenous
agree
groups
with,
of
then
white
I
people.
will agree with that Jewish person.
Okay, so you agree with Soros that white people are a danger if they're a homogenous bloc.
I don't
and that
like
we
any
should undermine
homogenous
them.
blocks. In
Okay,
fact,
so-
I'm actually famous on my channel for arguing with a black leftist that African countries shouldn't be allowed to expel white people in order to create black ethno-states. I don't like any kind. It's not a racialized thing. I got banned off Twitch for my spicy comments about Israel. I don't like ethno-states. For me, it has nothing to do with punishing white people.
Yeah, well, you don't like ethno-states, so I have to allow Jews to subvert immigration policy to
They go
undermine
through the
our
same channels
ethno-state.
that everybody else gets to go through.
I don't
If you
care.
want, you can lobby
They
the
should be
government
stopped.
into changing it.
They should be stopped.
It's the system you live in.
Yeah,
So
we should change it.
No, what you're talking about right now, this is what I mean with the whinging, you baby. This is the JQ. You know,
You're the one
you don't
whinging
like that
daily
the world has
about
changed,
trannies
and you
and
have
men
to
in
make a
dresses, aren't
conspiracy-
you?
Wait, hold on. Quit getting angry. You have to get angry on the subject we're on. It makes you look weak-minded if you have
Okay,
to trail off
buddy.
other ones. So, we're talking now about the system, and you're like, well, Jews were one of the groups that lobbied for a thing that made sense given their interests. Self-interested lobbying is literally how democracies work. Who
Yeah,
cares?
and
You
I'm
just don't like
advocating
the
for
outcomes.
white I'm advocating for white self-interest lobbying.
So how is it in our
Jews-
self-interest?
And Jews oppose it because it's
So
in the interest
how
of
is it
it's
in
the interest
our
of
What do you
self-interest?
it's in
mean?
the interest of white people to have a white majority so that they can wield
How?
political power, they can wield economic power, and they could advance themselves
What
in
do
their
you
race.
mean?
So okay, wait. So let's focus on this because self-interest
Let's
voting
focus
is
on this.
literally like how a democracy works. That's what you're supposed to do.
Literally
you
how
vote
a
for what you
democracy
care about,
works,
and
you
you
fucking
aggregate those
retard.
desires into kind of like a collective drive. So personally, I think that once you're in a country, you're a member of that country, and you get to participate in that process. But you are arbitrarily arguing that a specific racial group within this country has a higher priority when it comes to their political actualization than other groups. This is based on your fifis?
No, this is based on the historic whiteness of America, Canada,
care.
Australia, Europe.
I do not care.
Europe is the homeland of white people. I think it
Who
should
cares?
remain white. Just like I think that
Put on
Japan
that
should
fucking
remain
chapstick.
Japanese.
Why?
You know,
Gay boy.
because it's good to have different ethnic groups in the world, just as it's good to have different breeds of dogs in the world. Do we want to mix out all the breeds of dogs, or do we want to have
Sure.
distinct dogs?
You
I
can
mean,
mix them
I
up.
think
don't
I think
care.
a lot of people would say that it's better to have biodiversity of races, or in the case of animals, different species of animals. And there's a lot of concern about animals going extinct. But then, when it comes to race, we just think, well, let's just mix all the people together and have a brown race.
I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't.
okay,
I don't
you
think
don't
the need
care.
for.
Other
I don't
people
think
do.
the need for maintaining people who are very light skinned and very dark skinned is so great that it necessitates creating a racial ethno-state. This is very silly. Like, well, in the future,
Well, I do.
what if there are no very pale people? This is why we need a Fourth Reich today. Don't be silly. Why should white people be prioritized with political actualization here in the
Well,
States?
I think the example of South Africa is interesting, right? So white people once controlled that nation, and now they don't, and there's a racial grievance there with black people because of the apartheid, and now white people are at huge disadvantage. You have
They're not.
brutal farm attacks in
No,
South
they're not.
Africa. You
They're
have,
overwhelmingly
you have,
powerful.
You have affirmative action policies. I mean, speak to any white South African, they'll tell you they're kicked to the bottom of the list for jobs.
Well,
They
okay,
can't
well,
find
speak to
jobs.
speak to a black
th-
South
this-
African, and what are you going to listen to?
Yeah, and then black South Africans have the power. Look at the
Okay,
parliament.
go-
Show me a
go-
white person
wait.
in the government.
Yeah, South Africa's like 92% black. Look at
Okay,
who has
but
the
so
money.
so then white people should
Once
be in the
again, you
government,
say
right?
white people are oppressed in an area where they're overwhelmingly overrepresented in basically every demographic of power
So then why aren't they in the government? Why aren't they setting policy?
because they're an overwhelming minority of the population.
But if they control everything, you'd want to have your people in power in
I
making
didn't say they
decisions in the
control
government.
everything. Wait, hold on. Fathom
Okay, so
nuance.
so they
I
only
said
control
they were
it indirectly.
disproportionately powerful.
So why do they have like the affirmative action policies down there? It's called Black Empowerment, BE or something like that. And they
For the
are.
reason I just said.
Why
If
would white people do that?
White people are disproportionately. Wait, what is this policy?
It's for jobs where black people get preference.
So, like I just said, because white people have overwhelming advantages when it comes to educational and economic attainment, the affirmative action policies exist to counterbalance the advantage of white people. You don't put in place affirmative action to benefit the privileged group. You do it to benefit the
Yeah, so
disprivileged.
why would these powerful white people, these racist and powerful white people, want to privilege or elevate black people?
They don't. The government, which is mostly run by the people who are mostly
blacks.
black, does.
Okay.
Yeah, because
So
it's
then
mostly
blacks
black
have the
people in
political
country.
power. So blacks
So-
have the
wait,
political power.
okay, let's run this through again. Okay, maybe I'll say it slower the third time if needed. White people in South Africa have disproportionate educational and economic attainment, but they don't control the government because it's a democracy.
That
and
doesn't-
most of South Africa is black.
That shouldn't-
So the
that
government
shouldn't-
of South
that shouldn't
Africa
be the case. Why aren't the
passes
political parties
affirmative
having?
action laws.
Why don't the political parties have white people in charge?
What? Because
If-
they're
just-
voted on.
Okay, but the actual people in the parties
know
are not
how this
necessarily
works?
voted on.
Wait, hold on. Do you know how this works?
So like the main party in South Africa, do they vote for the person to get into that party, or they elect him, or they just appoint him?
So a candidate runs for election, and the people vote on a candidate. And given the
Yeah,
fact
and they're
that South
voting for
Africa
a-
is majority black, and politics are heavily racialized, considering they were
Okay.
under apartheid until recently, generally speaking, parties that represent the majority of the black people in black South Africa have black candidates. So the
And
government is run by mostly black people.
And so they don't vote for a white candidate. So I bet if a white person ran for one of these parties, nobody would vote for them because blacks are voting for blacks, and so they're
Yes,
voting in their
there is
racial
a racial
self-interest.
grievance in
Okay, so
formerly
then
apartheid South
so
Africa.
then white people are being disempowered, disenfranchised. They don't have the same say that black people have, especially in politics. The most
Okay,
powerful,
well, okay.
powerful instrument in society is the government.
So
And
we'll
so
try-
if the government's
we'll try
run
this
by
one-
black,
okay.
if the government's
try
run
this
by
one
black
more
people,
time.
in the interest of black people, to elevate the positions of black people above white people, then why the hell would white people want to partake in such a system?
Why do they stay
Why,
there?
why, they're trying to leave. A lot of them try to leave, but they can't get refugee status.
They're not.
I
Wait,
mean, I've talked to these people. I've
no,
talked to a
wait,
lot of
hold
them.
on, stop. You haven't. I'm more familiar
Yes,
with the
I have.
situation than you. No, you heard a couple
I
stories
just-
of white
I
farmers
just-
getting attacked.
two of them
you don't
last
even know
week,
how their
big guy.
political system works. The white people, and as is always the case with any large racial group in South Africa, there are poor white people, but on average, they're doing a lot better than the average black person. They are sheltered
there's
from a
white
lot of negative
slums.
government policy. Yes, like I said,
Yeah,
there
so-
are poor white people, However, on average, do you know how averages work? It's when you take a group of numbers and you use a mathematical formula to derive a single number from a collection, and you can use that to learn stuff.
Okay, none of this really matters to me. I'm just
I
telling you
know.
that when white people are disempowered the way that they have been in South Africa, and now in a democracy, as you say, black people will vote for other black people and not for the white people, and they will do that
Okay.
so that they can get advantages. This is not in the interest of white people. So that's a
Do
reason
you
for white
think-
people to separate. That's a reason for white people to have their own state
So
they
you
can have their own
realize
people in power.
the only reason this is an issue is because the white people in South Africa were people like you, right?
Yeah, they made a mistake by not separating from the blacks.
No. As in, you created the problem. This is always we're trying to find the guy who did it
Well, yeah,
situation,
they
where you
created
have
the
all
problem
these
by-
problems that are created by like very racist white people, and you, a very racist, I think, white person, are like, yeah, shame how all those black people are distrustful of white candidates who majority vote.
Well, okay,
How
so
could that have happened?
so that's the perfect thing. Then if black people are distrustful of white people, they have a historical grievance against white people, then why would white people want to exist in this kind of democracy where they can't ever win an election because blacks have a grudge against them, and they're just going to be progressively disenfranchised
Oh, maybe
in perpetuity.
the scars of
So why the
apartheid
fuck?
will heal. Wait,
So
not
why the
into-
fuck
wait,
would we
not
want to
into
continue to
perpetuity.
participate in this?
Wait, if it was into perpetuity, then how is it that white candidates are
Why
able
do-
to win when they run for election in local offices in areas that are majority black
Why?
in the American South?
Why do they have in South Africa breakaway territories like Orania?
Because a lot of the
Where-
white people
where
there
white
miss being
people-
able to own slaves.
No, it's because there's all kinds of violence done
Yeah.
against white farmers.
Yeah,
Well,
a
look at-
little
just like
bit,
in-
a little
just like
bit in South
Rhodesia.
Africa.
Just like
Just
in
like in
Rhodesia,
Rhodesia, the
when
other
white people
basically slave
lost
state, yeah.
power, when white people lost power, they were persecuted. Their
Maybe,
farms
well,
were taken
maybe
from
you
them.
shouldn't like
Their
do the
farms were
slave
taken
state
from
thing.
them. Okay, so
That's
you're just
slave-
justifying it. You're
So
justifying
wait,
it.
hold on. In this case, you're literally talking about like a colonized people, like repelling a foreign army. Like what you're
Okay,
essentially
okay,
saying is like,
so-
why are these black people not working with us as you're like raping and killing them?
So
Rhodesia,
white
like this is the
farmers-
black
so
people
white-
having grievance.
So white farmers deserve what they got there. They deserve to be killed and have their land taken from them. They're actually calling them back now. A lot of the white farmers are saying, "Please come back."
Wait, are we
because there's
talking
a
about
huge
Rhodesia or
crisis.
South Africa?
Rhodesia? There was a huge crisis there after white people got kicked out, basically.
Yeah. Do you know why? Because when
Be-
white
because
people came in with
communist-
guns
because
and took
communist
over, no,
dictator ruined
when
the
white
economy,
people-
Mr.
when white
Mugabe,
people
your
came
buddy.
in-
Okay,
when white
okay.
people came in with guns and conquered Rhodesia, and later they were overthrown and repelled because it wasn't a democratic state where black and white people were getting along. It was one where black people were held at gunpoint. There was no democracy. It was so undemocratic. Rhodesia was
Okay.
so fucked that the British colonial empire refused to endorse it. How bad do you have to be for the
So-
British to not even be willing to defend you? And they
So
didn't.
that's just more proof that blacks and whites can't live together in Africa.
You are
Blacks
the
and whites
problem
can't
in
live
this scenario.
together
You're like,
in
you're shooting a
America.
black
Blacks-
guy, and you're
blacks
like, why
and
can't we get
whites-
along?
What? Well, do blacks not shoot whites? Do blacks not do anything
In
bad to white
Rhodesia?
people?
Eventually they
Rhodesia.
did. They were right
Eventually
to
they
because you were the
absolutely
invading
did.
army. Yeah. Yeah.
They're doing it right now
Eventually,
in
yeah.
South Africa. So this is what happens, okay? So
What?
you're
It's
like you're
not
making the
being
point for
the
me for racial
occupying
separation.
army.
You are making the point for me for racial separation. They have a grievance.
so
they hate
again,
white people.
Let
they
me
want
let me
take our
try to
stuff.
let me try to run
White
this
people
by
were
you again.
privileged.
Okay.
And so now they
These
want to turn the
people in
tables.
Africa-
How about we just separate?
These people in Africa were separate until white people invaded, killed, and set up plantations for them to work on, and then that was when they hated the white people. People in
Well,
Africa
white people
didn't
were
hate
down there.
white people
Dude, white
until
people,
white
white
people gave them a
settlers-
reason to hate them.
White people were down there for hundreds of years ago, man. They
And
Dutch settlers were
and
there
how do you
before
think
there was
South
any other.
Africa's racial
They
situation
even-
was 300 years ago?
I don't even think there was. They were actually like almost separatist states there for white people before, and then the Boer Wars actually pushed them all together into one state. So prior to this, the whites were kind of running their own communities.
No, they weren't. All of these areas were
The
majority
Transvaal?
black.
The Transvaal state.
Wait, hold on. Wait. So just to be clear, because this is like comedy, the absurdity of what we're talking about. You're bemoaning the anti-white hatred of groups of people that you invaded and conquered and subjugated to hundreds of years of slavery and then borderline slavery conditions. And then in the past few decades, when they finally take their countries back from the occupiers, from people
Well, there was
who
no
were so
country. There was no
racist that
country.
the English
There was no
Empire-
South Africa.
Hold on.
Before the white people came, there was no.
The concept, wait, the
Rhodesia,
concept of a
okay?
nation state didn't exist as far back as the first colonial expeditions into South Africa.
Yeah,
But
so
stick with my
they
point.
didn't have nations.
Stick with my point. So you are bemoaning, oh, poor us, everyone hates the white man, when you are
Yeah.
literally going in there and subjecting them to the worst conditions
What do
imaginable.
you mean you? I did that? Did I personally do that?
I'm sorry,
So I
are
have
you
to
not
pay the
are you not
price?
here identifying with the white race today? Should I divest you,
Yes.
Martinez?
So the white race is collectively guilty for all of these sins.
Wait, you are, because you're ideologically complicit.
I'm collectively
I'm
guilty
not.
for. So I'm collectively guilty for what white people did anywhere at any time.
No, you're collectively guilty for
Because
what
I love
racists have done.
because I support whites and don't want whites to be persecuted and want whites to thrive, I have to take the blame for all this.
Could you just for a moment stop being a woman with me and like directly own up to what you believe? Oh, you just hate me because I support white people? Fuck out of here with this shit. Jesus
you do.
Christ,
You
were you
hate white
bullied in
people.
high school?
You hate
just for a
white
moment,
people.
listen to what I was saying. You're complaining about white grievance in areas where you conquered, raped, invaded, and enslaved.
Well, blacks
Obviously,
conquered, raped,
people there-
invaded, and enslaved all over the
People,
world. I mean,
hold
all
on,
over
stop.
Africa.
Again, whataboutism? You cry.
So what?
In these
So what?
areas, of course,
Yeah.
there is racial grievance. God willing,
Okay.
given enough time.
Okay,
it
so you're
will
telling me. So you're telling me
disappear.
I have to accept the racial grievance, and I have to go along with it,
No.
and I have to.
You don't wait. Do
accept
you live in
that
South
they-
Africa? Do you live in Zimbabwe?
No, but I
Then you don't have to deal with any of this.
Okay, but I'm concerned about. I'm basically just making
But you're
the argument
concerned because you
that
whine about stuff
when
that you haven't
white
experienced.
People, when white people become a minority, as they are in South Africa, this
White
this is
people
what
have
happens.
always been a minority in South Africa for the entirety of the time
Okay,
that white people have been
okay,
there.
so it's an example of whites being a minority and having their political power stripped from them, and them being
They didn't wait.
persecuted.
Hold on. They didn't. So hold on. They didn't have their political power stripped from them in a democratic sense. They were the autocratic rulers of that territory, and then they got brought down to being equal citizens. They were not equal citizens made
Well,
lower.
they're not equal citizens anymore.
They were the rulers made equal.
Yeah, but now the tables are turning.
Think for a
now,
moment before you say
now
what
white
you're about to
people are
say.
living. Now there's quite
You're
a few
about to
white
say
people
something
living
dumb.
in slums. There's quite a few white people down there suffering. There's
Oh
quite a few
no! Are
white
there black people living in
slums.
slums?
Maybe they are. Maybe they
Maybe,
are. But
but
I
there
don't,
might be.
I don't
We should
care.
get some reporters
I
on
don't
the
care.
scene to see if there are any black
But
slums in South Africa.
you understand
Or
that
if it's just the
I'm
white people.
advocating. I'm advocating for racial separation here, and I think this would
and
solve
doing
the
a
issue.
terrible job of it.
All right,
think-
all right.
I
Hang
think-
on. Let Brandon get in there a little bit more.
I think
Of course.
I think that would solve the issue of racial grievance. So if black people have this antagonistic view of America, where they hate the flag and they hate the nation and they hate the history and they hate it all, and they want to burn it to the ground as BLM did, then I think it's a pretty smart idea for white people to want to separate away from that, to get away from that,
You
to
can go to
avoid
Canada.
to avoid all the carnage that's on the way.
This is
And
a
so-
democracy.
And so it makes no sense for white people to just accept the status quo, accept the state of affairs of anti-whiteism being preached from the pulpit of Washington and from the media and all this, and just go along with it because
You're
my
not
slavery.
going along with it. You
okay?
voted for Trump.
Because my slavery and because of all this. So,
So wait, hold on. Wait.
it's not
wait,
in
stop,
white
wait,
interest
stop
to do
with
this.
the narrativizing. It's a democracy.
narrativizing.
If you don't like what's happening, you have a right to vote to bring about different political outcomes. We're discussing the morality of those outcomes. Just because you want something doesn't mean it's right.
And I think whites voting for Trump was an expression of that, wasn't it?
Yes, but we have to ask whether it's moral to want something. You're saying white people want this or want that. Well, now let's ask, is it good for them to want this? Is it morally
Yes,
just?
it's
Because if
good-
we just
it's
go by
good for
what
white
people want.
yeah.
Okay. So you believe that every person it's always morally good for a person to advocate for something if it's good for them exclusively? Are you
I don't
pro
care.
rape?
I don't care if it's morally good. Okay, I think that white people existing.
They're not sending our best.
So white people existing is immoral. Is that what you're saying?
What kind of retarded interpretation of what I said?
Why
was that?
are you
Get the
saying
fucking
that, then?
banana out of
Why
your
the
ear.
fuck are
When
you
did I
saying
say?
that?
No.
You're trying to
no,
get
no,
me to
no,
add,
no,
you're
no,
trying to
no.
get me to explain why us existing is a moral thing.
If you do you think I
Why the
said
fuck
that
would I
that
ever
white
have?
people
Why
existing
would I
is
ever
immoral?
have? Why would I ever have to
Did I
justify
say
our
that?
existence on moral grounds?
So we're not about asking to defend your existence. I was just asking you if you think it's always moral for a group or a person to advocate for something just because they want it.
No, not in every case.
Okay, and then you said I don't care about ethics, which is fantastic. So okay,
Yeah, in the sense that white people existing, I shouldn't have to explain that morally.
okay, so white people. Well, everything has to be justified morally, of course.
No.
Now we're to talk about white people existing. So there are more white people alive in the world now today than there were 50 years ago. It seems things are going well.
Yeah, but we're a global minority, and I just gave you the statistic
Every
showing
race is a
that
global minority.
whites are a minority in the world compared to blacks, compared to Chinese, and all the rest.
Okay.
And we're a declining group. Well, whereas the other groups are not declining.
How are we declining?
Not in the same way. Our population, our numbers are declining. Our birth rates are below replacement level in every single Western country.
Then fuck more people.
Oh, okay, fine, but the fact is they're just going to keep bringing more and more non-white people
Birth
here.
rates are declining everywhere. The only reason
Okay.
our birth rates decline faster is because we industrialized faster. It's
Okay,
evidence
but-
of our
but-
incredible level of development
But
that we hit that
this
peak before
this
other
is going to
countries.
result in a white minority very, very, very soon. So it's
All
in
the
our
other
interest
countries
to
are
try to
doing the same
reverse
thing.
this. It's in our interest to try to reverse this. It's in our interest to try to boost our birth rates and end
How?
immigration.
Wait,
well,
how would
there's all-
ending immigration
there's all
boost
kind-
our birth rates?
Well, look, I support some immigration from white countries. So I'm fine with Poles going to the UK or whatever. I mean, that's not a big deal to me. But importing tens of millions of people from the Middle East and Africa with very different cultures, Muslims and all these people
Wait,
who
what-
present all kinds of threats to us.
What threats? Demographically,
terrorism.
they commit fewer
Terrorism.
crimes. Muslims don't commit the
Oh, really?
crimes.
They commit the majority of terrorism in Europe and the most casualties.
I'm talking about
in recent
America right
years.
now.
Oh,
but
so
if
you
we-
don't want to talk about America, not Europe?
Well, I am American. If we want to talk
So
about
what? I'm
Europe,
not American. I'm not American.
what are you? Wait, then why are
Canadian.
we talking about America?
Canadian. Well, we can talk about any white
What is it
country in
with you
general.
Canadians pretending to be Americans for the sake of political discourse? You know the Nazi shit doesn't fly as well,
Well-
up there, so you try to
Well,
export it
because
down
you
here. You're a
don't
fucking
want to talk
immigrant,
about you don't want to talk about
Martinez.
anything other than America. So
Yeah, because I'm a
this is
fucking
what- this is
American
what we're
because
doing.
my blood is red and my oxygen pumps freely
okay,
through
we
it. Yeah,
could have
'cause my
made it
big
about
fucking
Canada.
American dick.
We
Obviously,
could
I
have
don't want
made
to
it
talk
about
about
Canada, but you don't want to talk about Canada, do you?
Would you see a moose yesterday? Yeah, no shit. Great. Keep it. I don't care. Yeah, no. In America, all these minority groups that I'm supposed to be afraid of commit fewer crimes on average than the
Black people.
native population.
So black people commit fewer crimes on average than who?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant like Muslims and people from Africa and the Middle East and stuff. Black people here in
No.
America do commit more crimes on average, though there are reasons for that.
Yeah, yes, they do. Over half of homicides, but in Europe, the majority of terrorism, the most deadly terrorist attacks, have been radicalized Muslims.
That's crazy. Well, why don't we see that here in America?
You haven't had Muslim terrorism in America?
We've, of course. So wait again. Going to give you a chance to walk that back. Okay. I didn't
just said
say
we don't see
never
it in
had
America.
it. So yeah, when I say don't see it, what I'm talking about in a country
when
with
you
a
say-
third of a billion people is that it doesn't represent a significant or substantial portion of the amount of violence or terrorism we see. Just try to keep up.
That's
When I
actually
say
not
What
true.
other
I mean,
terrorism do
the
you see,
FBI
Jack?
stats a few years ago said that Muslim terrorism was the majority of terrorism, and then left-wing anarchistic terrorism was second. That was
that
a few
is
years ago.
objectively incorrect.
Yeah, that was something I saw a few years ago in the U.S.
In a dream, perhaps?
It was FBI.
In a dream about the FBI. It's far
No,
right
it was
groups
FBI.
that do the terrorism, actually.
Hang on a second,
okay, so-
guys. Hang on. This is a good point to break in for just a second. We've got about a half hour left in the debate before we get to the closing statements Q&A. Before we get into the next half hour, the first half of this debate, the first hour, it was pretty blood sporty, which I'm okay with, and I enjoy the back and forth. But we've kind of come into some kind of rhythm where we can have maybe some decent dialogue the last 30 minutes as we kind of wind this thing down. So the floor is back. If you guys out in the audience have questions, make sure you send in your super chats. Go ahead, gentlemen.
I just want us all to get along.
He's a good
Look,
host.
at the
Pretty
end of
good
the
host
day,
so
the
far.
facts here are simple. Besides this, like, white grievance, we're about to be overtaken, we're going to lose our country bullshit
guy
that they've
down
been saying
here.
for 150 years, every bit of evidence we have towards the value of immigration has pointed in favor of continuing it. There's a reason why Nazis
I'm running
rejected
at
empiricism, it's because
10%,
reality
that's
makes
what's
them
up.
look very bad. It's just sort of a habitual.
So why
problem
can't
with
we
the
have
problem.
why can't we have white immigration though? Let's go back to the
You can have white
1950s.
immigration.
Well, let's go to whites only immigration. So we go
No.
back to the 1950s quota system that tilted the immigration to Northern Europe and Eastern Europe, and go back to that. That was fine. What's
I'm
wrong
fine with
that?
how we have it
Like,
now.
if
I want
it's
more,
so
actually.
great. Yeah, of course you are, but
Mhm.
white people
I'm a
who
white
actually
people.
care. White people who care about their race, who care about their heritage, who want a homogenous state.
Why
don't like
should
that.
we? I don't care about a
don't
homogenous
like,
state.
Don't like that.
See,
you
the
don't
problem-
care, but you're
the
a
problem is
cultural
at the end of the
imperialist,
day-
Bosch.
The
You're a
problem is at
cultural
the end of the
imperialist.
day,
You
like,
want every country
you
to be
can
like
never
your little
you can
tranny
never
utopia,
offer
right?
a better argument than like, well, we should defend white people because we should defend white people. It's always
Because
after
white
the brain
people are
damage
a
you have,
real
you
group
presuppose.
of people. Well, why do
We
black
should try
people
to make
defend
the
black
world
people?
better
Well, hang on.
for as
Why
many
do why
people as
do
we can.
black people? Why do black people defend black people then?
We should defend everyone and try to maximize the well-being for
But why does
everyone as
BLM
best as
defend
possible.
black people then?
BLM doesn't advocate for a black ethno-state, Martinez. You are
Okay, but
advocating for a white ethno-state.
They advocate for pro-black policy. They're not concerned
Okay.
about white people.
If,
They're not
if those
concerned about
pro-black
white
black
victims of
policies
police
are
brutality.
sensible, the
White
problem is
victims of hang
when-
on a second.
when they
you
say
talk for
like
2 minutes there,
pro-black
big guy.
policy, what they mean is helping black people. And when you
Andrew,
say
we're gonna have to
pro-white
do
policy,
2 minutes
you
because
mean
he
hurting
won't
white
let me
people.
talk.
Look, you interrupt as much as he does. I have a counter next to me. Like
So
you,
let's
the-
do
All right,
2
it's
minutes.
just my white genes. I colonize
just,
this conversation.
well,
So
look,
BLM
I do think
What's
a little
this
more back
racial
and forth would be
grievance?
all right.
I'm Polish,
BLM
Irish, you're
can advocate for
Martinez.
black
We can't get
people.
along. The racial gap really does widen.
So BLM's allowed to advocate for black people. There's other black organizations that advocate for black people, even though there's absolutely no laws discriminating against black people. It's all been abolished and rescinded, and we're moving towards the opposite of that, which is black supremacy, black privilege. And so, why the hell would white people then say, oh, okay, let's just let all the racial minorities do that, but we're not going to do that. We're going to be individuals, and we're not going to care about race. We're just going to
Are
let
black
the
people
others
trying to keep white people from immigrating in?
let the others care about race. Well,
Can you
if
answer that question? Are black people saying we should protect black people by not allowing white immigration? Is that a thing that they say?
I think that there are black politicians who probably do want to tilt immigration for black people.
No, wait,
For-
hold
for-
on, wait.
for
Who here is
non-white
out there?
people.
What black politicians are saying we should stop having immigration from Western European countries? Get the fuck out of here.
Well,
That's the
they
thing. The
know that
difference-
it's
the
not coming
difference
from
is-
there, though.
And this is the reason why, like, Stacy chose Tyrone over you in school. It's because they're not cowards.
So
when
they know
say
that-
when they say they value pro-black policy, they mean helping black people. When you say pro-white, you mean hurting black people. You're
So-
a coward. You don't give a
so
fuck about
when-
helping white people. What are your policies on
When
economic
Biden-
divestment?
What an
Wait,
idiot.
When
hey,
Biden
policies on economic
says-
divestment. What will you do to
What
help
the
the
fuck
wages
does
of
that
the
have to do
average
with
white
this?
working family? What are
When
you going to
Biden
do
says,
about
"Surge the
economic
fucking
alienation in the
border,"
suburbs?
Joe Biden says it's a good thing whites are becoming a minority.
Give me a
he
policy
says-
that'll help
and he
white
says-
people.
and he
Give
says-
me a policy that'll help white people.
Stopping immigration from non-white
This is what I mean.
countries.
It's always
In-
about hurting non-white people. You don't have
investing.
one. What are you going to do
investing in
about
white-
income
investing
inequality
in
or
white-
capitalism?
Investing in white communities. Let's say
Investing
let's
how?
have a pro-NATO policy.
All right, Vosh, let him
Giving
get in
giving
there.
giving loans. I don't know. Giving loans to small business owners. Whatever. There's a lot of things that can be done.
Us giving loans to small
But
business owners?
the
Okay.
fact is that Joe Biden says
That
it's
what
a
you're
good
pushing
thing
for?
whites are becoming a minority, And you should surge the border. That was his statement in the debate with Trump in 2020. Surge the border, and that's exactly what they did, because he knows that
Let us into
these
college at the
non-white
same rate
people
as others.
coming
How
in
about
are gonna
that?
Be good Democrat voters.
This is
The offers
exactly
them
what I
free
mean.
gifts.
If you and I'm being serious here. If you talk to a BLM activist, hey, what can you do to help black people? They're policy invested. They'll tell you about ways to like reshuffle the city's treasury, to invest in this or that, to care about the system. But this guy, how will you help white people? By banning immigration. This guy's hold on. This guy's
by making it
Martinez,
so that white people don't go
Martinez,
extinct.
you're talking too
Right?
much. It's crazy.
White people are going to go extinct, and so I think that's kind of helping.
He doesn't
white people.
care about white people. He cares about the race war. But actual white people day to day in America are not being hurt by fucking immigration. They're being hurt by capitalism, by inflation, by wage hikes and gas prices and cities
Isn't
that
dumping
choke the life out of
dumping millions
No.
of cheap
So again,
laborers
wait,
into the
he
market?
can't-
Isn't that helping
he
them? Isn't that
doesn't
hurting
care.
their wages too?
He only cares
So
about white people.
Doesn't it hurt
insofar
their
as it's a
wage?
vehicle
Doesn't it
to
hurt their
non-white people.
wages? Doesn't it hurt their wages to dump millions of low income or low
No,
educated,
wages on
low
average go up
skilled
through
labor?
immigration.
So you're telling
No,
me that
wages go
dumping
up.
millions and millions of
Yes,
low
I'm
skilled
telling you
labor
that.
makes wages go up?
Yes, it's been proven over and over.
Really?
This is what I mean.
So
he
there's
doesn't
like
even know the data on this
there's a
because
ton
he
of
only
studies
pretends to
that
care
would-
about white
would-
people
would
when it
say
gets back at
otherwise.
Tyrone from high school. It's never about
So
white people.
flooding a labor market makes the wages
Yes,
go up.
yes, labor's a resource. Keep up.
This is almost like the opposite of what so many
you
economists
can,
say.
you
but
can research it.
Okay,
Just
so you
Google
have
it. Google. It's
you
there.
have
No, stop getting mad
the
at me for you not
undeniable
doing research.
truth
You can
here.
Google it.
so like I don't know anyone who's
I don't care
that-
what you know. You don't know anything. Do it. Google
the,
Borjas,
the
wage
dumping
studies,
the
immigration
dumping
research.
low skilled
Here,
labor actually
I have
helps
links on
people.
this. Hold on. Ultimate. Here. How could bringing Jorge in here possibly? I'll show you. I'll happily show you. The research has been done, but you don't care. You don't care at all. It's about
Wasn't
the
there
race war
wasn't there
here.
research to the
You can
opposite
put that
effect?
in the private chat. if
Yeah, I
you
will.
want.
Here,
Okay.
hold on. Let me, I gotta find it. There's a big one.
Wasn't there a study by a guy called Borjas that said the opposite of that?
No, it didn't.
It didn't,
Borjas,
okay.
who's like a very anti-immigration guy, you know, at least in respects to like, he's
okay.
very cynical when it comes to like the effects of
He's a
immigration.
racist, is he?
No, I just said he's anti-immigration. I don't know his race policies. This is an econ guy. He said it was a wash, but that was an older study. Future studies have indicated that even for low-skill immigrants, like undocumented immigrants, the net effect on wages is overall positive. There's only one demographic that loses in the short term, which is native-born high school dropouts who experience something like a 1.7% decrease in average wages, but it eventually goes up because even those people benefit from the added labor in the system, which eventually sort of, you know, a rising tide rises all boats. Hold on, it's one of these 5G race and IQs.
Yeah, so let's get that immigration from Europe exclusively. How about that?
Let's get it from everywhere we can get it.
No,
Gotta get
let's
this country
let's
beefed
get it
up.
from Europe because you know I know you want to turn every single country in the world into the tranny utopia, into
I
the
love the
rainbow
tranny
nation, into the rainbow nation. But
Yeah.
so you're an imperialist, right? You're a cultural imperialist. You don't want
Yeah.
there to be any nation on earth that differs from your view.
I'm a tranny
You want-
imperialist. Every single guy. will
Yes,
be
you
done.
are a tranny
Yeah.
imperialist.
This is
You
co-
want
completely
everybody
real.
to be.
This is a
trans
real
and
political
gay.
belief.
That-
Serious.
Stop
people
with that
care.
word too, Martinez. Don't use that word on the channel.
Which
I
one?
can use it because I have trans friends.
You
Also,
just
I'm
transgender's fine.
He's trans himself, so he can use these
Yeah.
slurs.
Alpha
right?
to Sigma. That's right.
So,
He's a
Um,
so
trans.
you, so
Anyway.
you don't want any nation in the world to be ethnocentric. So what are you going to do? Is let's say a country in Europe decides, hey, we're actually going to do this. We're going to do the ethno state. What are you going to do about that?
I would hope you could politically pressure them. I mean, you can't invade just over that. That'd be horrible. But you can, like, you know, threaten
So
sanctions.
you want to
if
do
they're really
war?
bad.
You want to do war with them, right?
I just said you can't invade them. I just said the opposite of what
You
heard.
can't. So you want to pressure them with sanctions if they have an ethno state.
Well, depending on how they do the ethno-state. Like, if they end up mass killing or deporting people in their borders, then that could potentially be a crime against humanity. Depending on how bad what they do is, invasion might be warranted. Like, for example, if South Africa started slaughtering the 6 million white people within its borders, I would be fully in favor of NATO atomizing that place in the dust. You'd love that, right? Because you'd be getting back at them uppity blacks in South Africa, getting mad at their oppressors. But hey, I'm consistent.
Yeah,
I just don't like
I would be
ethno-states.
for helping out some white people down there.
So you would be okay with military interference to prevent the formation of an ethno-state?
No, I would be for creating an ethno state for white people in South Africa.
Okay, so you don't care about which areas historically belongs to which people, of course. You're the
Well, hang on. You don't
imperialist.
believe that. You don't believe that. You
No,
think
no,
it belongs to
this is-
everyone.
I love that I
You
tease
think-
this out of you.
you-
You're
you
like
think it
Africa
belongs
for
to everyone.
Africans. You're like Africa for Africans and Europe for Europeans, and then you're like, also,
Yeah.
we should have a white ethno-state in South Africa. Fuck
Well,
outta
look,
here.
those people
You're
have
the
been there for
imperialist,
300
bro.
years, big guy. Those people have been there for hundreds of years. There's
Okay,
plenty
who's
of
been there for
space.
thousands?
There's plenty. Yeah, they can have their ethno state. I'm not saying they shouldn't have it. I want them to
What
have
do you
it.
think a
Good.
South African ethno-state
let's
would look like?
let's have ethno states. If black people think that white people are going to do them harm, then the easy solution to that is to separate based on race. If black people in America think white people are going to do them harm, then let's separate. I think they're going to do us harm. I think they're doing us harm right now.
I agree.
And that the
Every
solution-
time any group
I
of
mean,
people within a country
just think
disagree, they
about-
should separate.
Well, I mean, it's happened
We're going to
before,
form
right?
the, we're gonna form
Checks
the
and
Balkans all over the world.
yeah, yeah. Why not? I think that's
Yeah,
that's
the
a
Balkans
good example.
are doing great, bro.
That's
The
a good
s-
example.
The
I mean-
post-Yugoslav
I mean, look
collection of
at,
states are
um,
doing great, dog.
Look at Ukraine. I think that's a perfect example, right? Where you had Russians who were in the east of the country, and I believe that if Russians had been excluded from the Ukrainian state back in 1991, I don't think you have this war in Ukraine, because
They
what
weren't
was the
excluded from
what
the
was the
Ukrainian state.
I know, but I'm saying if they were, I don't think Putin could have invaded, because Putin used the Russians there, their existence there, to justify his invasion. He says, I'm here to protect them from the evil Nazi Ukrainians. But if they had excluded them out before this, in 1991, it says, look, this is a Ukrainian state for Ukrainians. We don't want Russians in here. We have historical beef, right? We had problems for a long time. I think there's no war in Ukraine. So that's proof to me
Alright.
that multiculturalism can be a danger to your nation.
but
A lot
then
of the
you-
Russians,
You
a
fail
lot
to
of the-
understand
a lot
that
of
the
the
reason this
Russians-
is an issue is because the Russians are like
Hang on.
you. They're ethno-staters.
hang on.
The
Hang on.
only
No, they're
problem,
not. No,
well,
they
you're
are not.
prescribing political solutions.
not
to the,
ethno-staters.
You're prescribing political solutions to the
This was
problem
okay.
of people like
Not-
you exist.
Look,
in.
not a
Like,
great-
You're a
No, no,
disease
they're not
saying
ethno-stater.
like,
What are you
you're
talking
a
about?
disease saying
Big
like,
guy.
okay, you need to take
Big
some
guy. Those
medicine because
Russians-
otherwise, like, I will kill you.
Big guy, those Russians are not ethno-staters, okay? They have Mongol soldiers, they have Chechens, they have
Yeah,
Muslims,
which they're
they have all
conscripting in
kinds of
disproportionate
people.
numbers, so they
Yeah,
die in
they're
the front
conscri-
lines.
they're conscripting
Russia
white
is
people, too.
extremely ethnically supremacist.
No,
for the
it's
Russians.
not.
Yes,
Putin
it is.
said-
Wait, they're
Putin-
literally
big
conscripting
guy,
en masse the
big guy,
Chechens and the people
Putin-
from Siberia.
Putin is a multiculturalist like you. He says diversity is the strength of Russia, and that 300 ethnic groups are all equally Russian. And then they have these commercials coming out of Russia of like Tajiks
Straight
and
up.
Uzbeks, and they're like, "I am Russian." They have these weird commercials coming out.
Yeah, Stalin did the same
Putin-
thing, and he killed
yeah,
millions of them.
Putin is not an ethno-nationalist at
They're
all.
literally
He's
on
a
state TV talking
multiculturalist.
about how Ukraine is a fake ethnicity with a fake country, and how he should reestablish
Yeah,
the Ukrainian
it's
border.
it's a white ethnicity they're trying to delegitimize, but then they accept non-white ethnicities into Russia, right? They accept Tajiks and Uzbeks are the leading immigrants into Russia right now. And so what I'm saying is that if Ukraine had been smart, they would have said to the Russian citizens, look, you guys are a danger. You're a fifth column. Maybe you don't all agree with this. Maybe you don't all support Russia, but they have been
right, I'm outta
weaponized
here.
by